The first time Miss Tasha laid eyes on the girl, something in her gut told her this child was different. But she ignored it. It was the start of a new school term at Ocean Crest Academy, a strict boarding school near the coastal town of Alash. Miss Tasha, the school's no-nonsense English teacher, prided herself on discipline. She had dealt with stubborn students before, but never someone like Amara. Amara was strange. Too quiet. Too distant. Too perfect. She never spoke in class, not even to answer roll call. But her eyes held an unnatural depth, like the sea at night. She sat at the back, always gazing out the window, watching the ocean waves crash against the shore. The other students whispered about her. She never talks. Ever. I heard she came from nowhere. Just appeared one morning. Some say she's cursed. But Miss Tasha didn't believe in childish rumors. She believed in rules. And when a student disrespected those rules, there were consequences. So, the first time she asked Amara to read a passage from the textbook, and the girl simply stared at her with those haunting blue-green eyes, Miss Tasha's patience snapped. Stand up. Her voice was sharp. Amara rose slowly, her white uniform blouse impossibly neat, her posture unnervingly graceful. But she said nothing. Read the passage, Miss Tasha ordered, tapping the book. Silence. The class shifted uneasily. A few students snickered, expecting Amara to embarrass herself. Miss Tasha frowned. You think this is a joke? I said read. Still, Amara didn't open her mouth. She simply lowered her gaze, her expression unreadable. Anger bubbled in Miss Tasha's chest. This was clear defiance. Fine, she said coldly. If you don't want to talk, then you can kneel outside in the sun until you learn some respect. A murmur rippled through the classroom. Everyone knew how harsh the sun was this time of year. The school's cement floors burned like fire by midday. Amara hesitated. For the first time, a flicker of emotion crossed her face. Fear. Not fear of Miss Tasha. No. Something else. Something deeper. But Miss Tasha didn't care. She grabbed Amara's wrist and dragged her toward the door. The second she touched the girl's skin, a sharp, icy chill shot up her arm. She gasped. Why was Amara's skin so cold? A strange, electric current passed between them, and for a moment, Miss Tasha felt like she was standing at the edge of something deep, dark, and ancient. Amara's lips parted slightly. Her mouth moved as if she wanted to say something, but no sound came out. A strong gust of wind suddenly swept through the classroom, rattling the windows. A whisper, low, eerie, and distant, seemed to echo in Miss Tasha's ears. You shouldn't have done that. Miss Tasha shook her head, snapping out of the trance. She glared at Amara, shoving her out the door. Kneel there until you're ready to talk. And with that, she slammed the door shut. But what Miss Tasha didn't know was that she had just made the worst mistake of her life. Because Amara was not an ordinary child. She was the only daughter of something far more powerful. And far more dangerous. And her mother was coming. The sun burned high in the sky, baking the schoolyard. Amara knelt on the hot concrete, her hands resting on her thighs, her face unreadable. Inside the classroom, students struggled to focus. A few stole glances at the window, watching her. Some whispered, "She hasn't moved. How is she not crying? Maybe she really is cursed." Miss Tasha ignored them, though a strange unease sat heavy in her chest. She couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. She glanced at the door, expecting to see Amara shifting uncomfortably, maybe wiping sweat from her brow. But no. Amara sat there, still as a statue. And then, Miss Tasha noticed something. The sky had changed. The once clear blue had turned an eerie shade of gray-green. Thick clouds rolled in from the ocean, moving too fast, too unnatural. Then came the wind. It howled through the school corridors, rattling windows and slamming doors. The students gasped as the lights flickered. Miss Tasha's heart pounded. A storm? But there had been no sign of rain this morning. A sharp crack of thunder made her flinch. And then, she heard it. A sound so unnatural, so bone-chilling, it made her blood run cold. It wasn't thunder. It wasn't wind. It was a voice. A low, echoing whisper that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Release her." Miss Tasha's breath hitched. She turned sharply, her eyes darting around the classroom. Did anyone hear that?" she asked, her voice tight. The students looked at her, confused. They had heard nothing. Outside, Amara lifted her face to the sky, her blue-green eyes darkening like the storm above. The wind grew stronger. A window shattered somewhere. A few students screamed. Miss Tasha's chest tightened. Something was wrong. Very, very wrong. Suddenly, the classroom door burst open, without anyone touching it. A cold gust of wind rushed in, sending papers flying. The fluorescent lights flickered wildly. And then, the walls began to shake. A deep, guttural sound rumbled through the air, something ancient, furious, and inhuman. Miss Tasha stumbled back, her heart hammering. And then, she saw it. A shape. Dark, shifting, almost invisible, but there. Standing at the classroom entrance. Tall. Unfathomable. Its presence sent a chill through the air. The students gasped, some crying, others frozen in terror. The shape had no face, but it had eyes. And they were locked onto Miss Tasha. A voice, deeper than the ocean, heavier than the storm, spoke. "You have made a grave mistake, Tasha." Miss Tasha's knees buckled. How did it know her name? Her throat went dry. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps. And then, the shadow moved, rushing toward her like a wave crashing to shore. Miss Tasha screamed and stumbled back, her scream choking in her throat. The shadowy figure surged toward her like a tidal wave, cold, suffocating, unstoppable. Then, just as it reached her, a single sound cut through the chaos. A voice. Soft yet commanding. "Stop." Instantly, the wind died. The shaking walls stilled. The eerie presence froze. Miss Tasha turned in shock. It was Amara. She stood at the doorway, her hands at her sides, her once unreadable expression now holding something terrifyingly powerful. For the first time since arriving at the school, Amara spoke. "I told you not to come," she murmured. The shadow shifted, almost retreating. Then, in a voice thick with warning, it whispered, "She hurt you. She must be punished." Amara's face remained blank. But her eyes, her glowing, unnatural blue-green eyes, flashed with something Miss Tasha could not name. "No," Amara said. "Not yet." The presence hesitated. Then, like mist dispersing, it vanished. The air grew warm again. The lights flickered back to normal. The storm outside vanished as if it had never been there. But the classroom was left in terrified silence. Miss Tasha's hands shook as she pressed them to her chest, trying to control her breathing. She turned slowly to face Amara, her mind racing. What was that?" she whispered. Amara didn't answer. She simply walked forward, stepping inside the classroom. The other students shrank away from her. Even the ones who had whispered about her before now looked at her with something different. Fear. "Who are you?" Miss Tasha asked, barely able to get the words out. Amara met her gaze. And then she said something that sent a fresh wave of chills down Miss Tasha's spine. "I am my mother's only daughter." Miss Tasha frowned. "Your mother?" The students held their breath. "Yes," Amara said softly. "And she is watching." Miss Tasha swallowed hard. Who is your mother?" Amara tilted her head slightly, her expression eerily calm. Then, she leaned in just enough for Miss Tasha to hear the answer. And when she said it, the blood drained from Miss Tasha's face. Because the name Amara whispered was one that should not have been spoken. A name that belonged to something that lived beneath the ocean. A name that had been feared for centuries. The name of the most powerful mermaid queen to ever exist. Miss Tasha staggered back, her heart pounding. She had heard that name before. Everyone had. A name spoken only in whispers by fishermen who swore they had seen things no human should see. A name woven into ancient folktales, tales of a mermaid queen who ruled the deep, whose wrath could swallow entire villages, whose tears could summon storms. Queen Morana, the Sea Mother, the most feared being in the waters of Elash. Miss Tasha's breath came in shallow gasps. That's not possible, she stammered. Amara didn't blink. But it is. A heavy silence filled the room. The students, frozen in fear, clung to each other, eyes darting toward the windows as if expecting the ocean itself to crash into the school. Miss Tasha tried to steady herself. She swallowed. You're lying. Mermaids aren't real. Amara just stared. Unblinking. Knowing. Then, something happened. A single drop of water trickled from Amara's fingertips. Then another. Then another. Miss Tasha's eyes widened in horror. It wasn't sweat. It wasn't rain. It was coming from inside her. Within seconds, a small puddle formed beneath Amara's feet. The air grew thick with the salty scent of the ocean. And then, the whispers returned. Soft. Haunting. Ancient. This time, everyone heard them. You should not have touched her. You should not have hurt her. The ocean never forgets. A low hum filled the air, a sound so deep it vibrated through the floor. It wasn't coming from Amara. It was coming from the water beneath her feet. Miss Tasha shook her head violently. No, this wasn't real. But the growing panic in her students' eyes told her it was. And then Amara spoke again. Her voice was not her own. My mother has given you a choice, Tasha. Miss Tasha's throat tightened. What choice? The puddle beneath Amara darkened. The air grew thick with power, something ancient, something that did not belong on land. You can kneel and beg for forgiveness, Amara whispered, or you can face the curse of the sea. Miss Tasha's knees buckled. She had spent her whole life believing in discipline, in control, in logic. But there was no logic here. Just fear. Real, raw, crippling fear. Her lips trembled. I didn't know, she whispered. I didn't know who you were. Amara tilted her head. And does that make your punishment less deserved? Miss Tasha's breath itched. She thought of the stories. The ones where men who defied the sea never returned. Where entire villages drowned overnight because someone had angered her. She thought of her own life. Would she survive if she refused? Would she even wake up tomorrow? The whispers grew louder. The puddle beneath Amara spread. It was no longer a puddle. It was a tide. Creeping toward Miss Tasha's feet. She had to decide. Now. Miss Tasha's entire body trembled as the tides slithered toward her. It was no ordinary water. It moved with purpose, dark and ancient, whispering threats she couldn't comprehend. The students held their breath. No one dared to move. No one dared to blink. Miss Tasha dropped to her knees. Her pride screamed at her, but her fear was louder. She bowed her head, her voice barely a whisper. I am sorry. The tide stopped. The air shifted. The whispers fell silent. For a moment, all was still. Then, Amara stepped forward. Miss Tasha dared to lift her gaze. Amara's expression was unreadable, her eyes glowing like the deep sea under moonlight. You have been spared, Amara said. But the ocean never forgets. Miss Tasha's throat tightened. You will carry this lesson, Amara continued. You will never raise your hand in anger again. Miss Tasha nodded frantically, her chest rising and falling in short, panicked breaths. Amara blinked once, and then, just like that, the tide vanished. The room fell into an unnatural silence. The scent of salt faded. The heavy air lifted. The light steadied. It was as if nothing had happened. Except, everyone knew something had. The students gawked at Amara, their fear replaced with awe. Miss Tasha, still kneeling, felt her hands shake as she pressed them against the cool floor. She had almost died. She had almost been dragged to a place where no one returned. And Amara, this quiet, mysterious girl, had saved her. But why? Why spare her? Miss Tasha looked up, searching for an answer. But Amara was already walking away, her steps slow, deliberate. At the door, she paused. Without turning, she spoke one last time. "She will come if you forget." Then she walked out. Miss Tasha released a shuddering breath. She would never forget. No one in that room ever would. And from that day on, not a single teacher, not Miss Tasha, not anyone, ever laid a hand on Amara again. Because they all knew the truth. She was not just a student. She was the only daughter of the sea. And the ocean was always watching. Hope you enjoyed the story. If so, hit the like button and subscribe for more mind-blowing African stories on this channel. Would you have knelt like Miss Tasha or risked the curse? Let us know in the comments below.